Alrighty, so looks like Undisputed Boxing has a new update, and this one is on blocking. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch the whole entire video through, and then when we're done, we're going to break down what we actually heard and see if we can make sense of it. I do want to point out that this video can be you can watch this video in 4K, but I'm not going to watch it in 4K just so that I don't have any stutters as I'm watching the video. So if you're watching it right now and you're saying to yourself, oh my God, why does this game not look as good? It is not their fault. That's just the quality I'm watching the video at. So I'll leave a link to this particular video in the description below. Go check it out so you can see the actual quality of the game in 4K. Okay, so just something to keep in mind.
Hey boxing community, we're back with another Undisputed update as we make our way toward our October 11 launch. Today we'll be sharing details about some changes we're making to blocking. Throughout the course of early access, we've heard two things from players: that blocking certain punches, like body shots, isn't as consistent as it should be, but that in other situations, holding down block as default gameplay tactic is too effective. Here's how we're addressing those two pieces of feedback from you. We've updated blocking poses in Undisputed to improve the consistency of all blocks, but in particular, body blocks, so you won't see as many punches bleeding through when you feel like you should have stopped them. There will also be some adjustments to how block health works. It used to be that block health regenerated quite quickly when you weren't actively blocking punches, even if you kept your guard held up. Now, if your guard stays held, block health regenerates a bit slower, and you'll have to briefly let go of block for it to regenerate at a faster rate. This means you have to make good decisions about when to let off block, as it could open a small window for an aggressive opponent to land punches. We've also spent time tweaking the balance of block health and how it diminishes over the course of a fight. There should be an element of risk relying too much on blocking as a defensive tactic. Sometimes in real life fights, a boxer can wear down their opponent's guard with shots that don't score by throwing a high volume of punches. These kinds of scenarios are heavily dependent on fighter ratings and styles. So choosing a fighter with a high block health attribute will give you a better chance of your guard being useful later in the fight. And if you want to attack an opponent with a great guard, you should select a fighter who has high overall stamina, stamina regen, and stamina recovery stats. You'll also notice that block health drains a bit faster when a fighter is dazed. This will help make block health even more important, as it could be the difference between surviving and being knocked out late in a fight. Thank you to our early access players who have given us great feedback on blocking to help make these adjustments possible. We look forward to seeing you enjoy them in October.
Okay. So based on what I heard, quite a few positives here, but let's go back and rewatch the video, and we're going to break down these points step by step and see if we can make sense of it right here. So we're going to start here.
Details about some changes we're making to blocking. Throughout the course of early access, we've heard two things from players: that blocking certain punches, like body shots, isn't as consistent as it should be, but that in other situations, holding down block as default gameplay tactic is too effective. Here's how we're addressing those two pieces of feedback from you. We've updated blocking poses in Undisputed to improve the consistency of all blocks, but in particular, body blocks, so you won't see as many punches bleeding through when you feel like you should have stopped them. There will also be some adjustments.
Okay, so players complained that blocking the body was not as consistent as it was supposed to be, and a lot of times punches will bleed through when they don't feel like it should. And players also complained that they were noticing that a lot of players were focusing heavily on blocking while ignoring other methods of defense, like your footwork, your head movement, your pivot lunges, and regular lunges. And so because of that, they've improved the block poses to allow for less bleed through when you're blocking low, and they've also nerfed, essentially they've buffed low blocking and they've nerfed high blocking. Let's see how he said they did that.
Adjustments to how block health works. It used to be that block health regenerated quite quickly when you weren't actively blocking punches.
Okay, so it used to be that block health regenerated quite quickly when you weren't actively blocking, which essentially means, so there's a difference between your regular blocking and your active blocking. So your regular blocking is just what happens, the animation that plays when you hold R2 and there's no punches being thrown at you. And I'm using R2 like R2 leads to your fighter blocking. So the regular animation that plays when your fighter brings his hands up, that's your regular blocking. Active blocking is the animations that play when a shot is being thrown at you. So let's say your hand is up and someone tries to throw a hook on this side and you block it. Now you're actively blocking. So these are the animations that's playing. So he's saying, let's go back and listen to what he said again.
When you weren't works. It used to be that block health regenerated quite quickly when you weren't actively blocking punches, even if you kept your guard held up.
Yeah, so block health regenerated quite quickly when you weren't actively blocking. So when you're not actively blocking and you're just keeping your hand up, block health was regenerating very, very quickly. But they're going to change that.
Now, if your guard stays held, block health regenerates a bit slower, and you'll have to briefly let go of block for it to regenerate at a faster rate. This means you have to make good decisions about when to let off block, as it could open a small window for an aggressive opponent to land punches.
Yeah, so this is essentially going to be similar to the way Fight Night Champion worked, where if you were holding block and you were not letting go of block and you were just hugging it, and someone is throwing punches into your guard, eventually those punches will start bleeding through a lot quicker, which led to players in Fight Night Champion pumping the block, which is essentially holding block, letting go of block, holding block, letting go of block, because the block, your block strength was at the max when you first hold it down, when you first initiate it. So what they're saying here, though, is that when you let go of the block, your block health will regenerate a lot quicker as opposed to you holding it down, which is going to encourage players to not just hold block. And what they're hoping happens is you let go of the block, and when you're letting go of the block, you're using other methods of defense, like your footwork and your head movement. Okay?
We've also spent time tweaking the balance of block health and how it diminishes over the course of a fight. There should be an element of risk relying too much on blocking as a defensive tactic. Sometimes in real-life fights, a boxer can wear down their opponent's guard with shots that don't score by throwing a high volume of punches. These kinds of scenarios are heavily dependent on fighter ratings and styles. So choosing a fighter with a high block health attribute will give you a better chance of your guard being useful later in the fight. And if you want to attack an opponent with a great guard, you should select a fighter who has high overall stamina, stamina regen, and stamina recovery stats. You'll also notice that block health drains a bit faster when a fighter is dazed.
Okay, so that last point that he made, now block health is going to be affected more than it used to as the fight progresses, which means on paper, they don't want you to focus so much on blocking and not use other methods of defense because of that. So because you know that if you just hog block and your opponent is just teeing off into your block, over time your block is just going to fucking wear down. They want you to let go of the block occasionally, use other methods of defense, and save your block health so that if the fight is a long fight, you'll still have enough block health to actually go through the whole entire fight, as opposed to using up all of your block health early because you're dependent too much on blocking, and then later on in the fight, you don't have any block health left and you're just screwed. And then the last point right here is that when you're dazed, when you're hurt, your block health regenerates slower.
This will help make block health drains a bit faster when a fighter is dazed.
No. The block health drains faster when you're dazed. So when you're hurt, your block health drains faster, which means that the opponent will be able to get through your block a lot quicker when you're hurt. All right, so I think we have a pretty good understanding of what they're going for, right? It's like Steel City Interactive, they have a game in mind that they're trying to design, have a vision. And the vision they have right now for defense is they want every single method of defense to have utility. They don't want one method of defense to rise above the rest, right? They want you to use your footwork. They want you to use your head movement. They want you to use your blocking. They want you to use your pivot lunges, and they want you to use your regular lunges. They want a situation where they're seeing players have success with every single method of blocking, of defense. And of course, to do that, they have to make sure that one method of defense is not so attractive that the rest are just completely discarded. And based on player feedback, this is the feedback you guys were giving them, the block was too strong, the block was too dependable for high guards, for high blocking, and it was too weak for body blocking. So it's very good what they're trying to do on paper. If it works out exactly how they're trying to do it, it is going to result in a very fun game to play where we're seeing different styles shine, because they did mention if you're the kind of player that, loves, being aggressive and you love using fighters that move forward and throw more shots, then of course you need to try to find someone with high stamina and also high stamina regeneration. And if you're the kind of player that likes blocking more than you like using head movement, then maybe stick to fighters with very, very high blocking stats. And so on paper, if this works out the way they want, it is going to lead to a more diverse style of play and an overall more fun game. But everything has an entailment. Every single change you make has an entailment. There's your vision and what actually happens. And a vast majority of the time, based on experience and just based on what we've seen, a lot of times your vision doesn't exactly play out the way you want it to in the real world. And if I had to guess, if I had to put my money on something, I would think that players probably will find ways around this the same way they did with Fight Night Champion. So here's what I think is going to happen, okay? And I'm hoping it doesn't, but here's what I think is going to happen. I think when the game drops, what we're going to see is block pumping like we saw in Fight Night Champion, where players are holding block, letting go, holding block, letting go, holding block, letting go. So you're not going to see less blocking, I don't think. You're just going to see smarter blocking, more. So it's not going to be hug block the whole entire time. So the overall blocking percentage is not really going to drop. Players would just let go, have it regen, and block again. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm hoping that this means head movement will be buffed and players will want to use more head movement, but I don't think it's going to play out that way. I also think that because of that, because players are going to be pumping the block, I think it is going to be more attractive to be aggressive in Undisputed, which means players are probably going to start picking fighters with very high stamina, very high speed, very good power, and it's going to be more attractive to try to break down that block as opposed to the opposite, especially because now where they've buffed certain aspects of the block, they've also nerfed certain aspects of it, because moving forward as the fight goes on, your block is going to degenerate a lot quicker than it used to. So is this going to play out the way they want, man? Fingers crossed it does. Fingers crossed it does. But I'm going into it with realistically, all right? I'm optimistic, but I'm also going to be realistic because we've seen this before. We've seen this play out before. So I'm going to leave it at that, though. Kudos to them for making these changes. Hopefully it works out. And you guys let me know in the comment section what you think about these changes. How do you think it's going to play out? And I'll see you guys later. As always, stay safe. Peace out, boys. Have a good one.